Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to Your Arms to Israel International Ministries and our studio. It's wonderful to have you with us this week, ready to join us in the Nazarene Yisraelite truth of the Latter-day Gathering and restoration of both houses of Yisrael. There really is no other message in Scripture. It is a message of Yahshua gathering the nations, turning them from the ways of their pagan ancestors, leaving their Western Gentile mindset behind, because it is written in Yirmiyahu chapter 16 that in the latter days all men will come from the ends of the earth, saying, truly we have inherited only lies, only vanity, and only falsehood. And in the latter days men will acknowledge their pagan foundation, and will say, in that day, Jeremiah 16, Yirmiyahu says that they shall know, the nations, they shall know that I am Yahweh Elohim. And so that's what we're all about, this Your Arms to Israel International Ministries Shabbat Video Club. We're honored to have you with us. We're honored that you've taken the time to be with us. And please feel free to share these wonderful messages that are anointed and pinpointedly, accurately guided by the Ruach HaKodesh. And as you stay with us through the months and through the weeks, you will see your most kadosh emunah, faith, being built up in the truth of the commonwealth. That's right, the commonwealth of Israel. Yahweh wants you and I to be equal heirs, equal partakers, equal citizens, drinking of that same commonwealth, because Yeshua is king of Yisrael, and certainly not of a separate non-Yisraelite entity. And so sit back and again, make yourselves at home and be comfortable with us, and we'll go right now, immediately, into today's special Shabbat service. Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom, B'Shem Yeshua, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, Shamo v'Zako v'Dimo Echad, Ishmeyeinu El HaYuchad, Yahweh Echad, U'Shamo, His name, Echad, what? Shemo בן אדם is master בשבת. תודה רבה, בן אדם. That's right. Israel, do not be sad, 'cause the joy of Yahweh is your strength. Let us rejoice and be glad. Come on, Israel. Stay set apart to Yahweh. Hey! Israel, do not be sad. Joy of Yahweh is your strength. Let us rejoice and be glad. Everybody sing.
And 10. Yes, today's Parsha. I've entitled this message Preaching for a limited amount of time due to the fact that there were muchos tigomonias. A message entitled Eternal Twin. Eternal Twin. What's the name of this message? Eternal Twin. Yahweh's been doing something in my life, if you don't mind me sharing this with you, where I am being called to teach on the weekly Torah Parsha. And from there, he's springboarding me into other revelation. Rather than being led by the Ruach, I'm now being led by the Torah and his Ruach. So by following the Torah portion, I am starting off with the grounding of Torah, and then if the Ruach wants to take me into the Nevi'im or into the Brit Chadashah, well, I'll just let him take me in that direction. And we'll pray for you too, Roberta, before you leave, okay? We'll pray for our sister also.
Hallelujah.
So Yahweh is having me firmly founding me and founding firmly me in this Torah, and then from there taking my message. And that's interesting because I heard an old preacher, old pastor say a long time ago, the reason he starts and he preaches from the Torah every week is because that's the foundation of our faith. That's the foundation of everything we believe. And so if we start with the foundation and we build our message from the foundation, we're going to be okay. As opposed to starting somewhere in Gilead and then working our way back. Make sense? Okay, good. I know I'm a kind of sense. I'm a sense-making kind of guy. So we see from today's parsha in Devarim 21:10, we can learn a lot of things. Let me read Devarim 21:10, Deuteronomy 21:10. When you go forth to war against your enemies, and Yahweh your Elohim has delivered them into your hands, and you have taken them captives. The first thing we learn is not if we go to war, but as a nation, war is an integral part of our national mission and calling. Not just spiritual warfare, but also fighting, bloodshedding, military bloodshedding, physical fighting. There are 613 mitzvot in the Torah. Okay? 613. Commandments. Mitzvot. Out of the 613, 7 of the mitzvot deal with fighting, military fighting, milchama, physical fighting. As a nation, Israel called and given instructions about fighting. And the message of the Torah, one of the messages in this understanding, in verse 10, it says, when you go to war, not if you go to war, when you go to war, you are to war and fight, meaning you are not to sit back and wait for a miracle to occur to solve a problem militarily or even spiritually. We as Israel we must of necessity wage war against our enemies physically as well as spiritually. We won't get into Ephesians chapter 6 today. We won't even get into that. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, principalities and powers, spiritual wickedness in high places. We're not even going to get into that. We know about spiritual warfare. But Israel is called as a nation to be ready for combat, not just spiritually, but also militarily. So that we are not called to wait for Yahweh to deliver us. If Yahweh chooses to deliver us, that's his prerogative. But we are not to wait on our blessed assurance for Yahweh to deliver us. We are to be proactive, not reactive, and not just individually, spiritually, but as a nation when it comes to the military endeavors of the Jewish people in the land of Israel. Israel must be prepared militarily to defend themselves and to wage war against its enemies. Could you imagine if the people of Jewish Israel were in the land of Israel and they were just waiting for miracles to be delivered week after week and day after day, and if they didn't build a wall of protection to protect them from the sons of Edom? Could you imagine what would happen? No wonder the world doesn't like the wall, and they're telling Israel, take down the wall, because you don't see weekly Sunday bombings on buses in Jerusalem. You don't see weekly blowing up of ice cream parlors every Sunday like you used to. Now you hear of one bomb every month, or it occurs somewhere in the outskirts of Haifa or up in north, but you don't see that anymore every week in Jerusalem. And the Arabs want blood, and the sons of Edom want blood, and they're not getting their blood fill. So what they're doing is they're coming to the United Nations in the court of The Hague, the International Court, and requesting that the wall that Ariel Sharon, blessed is he, who built that wall to protect his citizens, no, now they want to tear down that wall. So Israel in Jewish Israel is engaged in a process of proactive military operations. That's why George Bush is a great president, and though many of you have been duped by the media and you're thinking politics instead of thinking reality. Let me explain to you why you need to vote for George Bush. Let me explain that. Well, you don't understand, Rabbi, I live in the ghetto. No, you don't understand. It's that ghetto mentality that keeps you in bondage.
Thank you.
Now let me explain to you why everyone in this room should vote for George W. Bush. Now regardless of who is in the Oval Office, whether you have a job or you don't have a job, depends basically on Yahweh and not on who's president.
That's right.
If you get a job and you don't have a job, it's Yahweh's blessing and favor versus Yahweh not giving you blessing and favor. It has nothing to do with a donkey or an elephant sitting in the Oval Office. If you think putting an elephant in the Oval Office is going to give you a job, then you've been overdosing recently on Hawaiian Punch.
Sadly mistaken.
Exactly. So what's going to give you a job is Yahweh's favor. Now, let's continue. Now let's get to George W. Bush. So the thinking and the proactive stance is this. We have two choices. We are engaged in a generational war against terror. They came to New York. Next time they may come to Miami. Next time they may come to Philadelphia. Next time they may come to the Garden State. Next time they may come to New Mexico. We don't know where Al-Qaeda or the terrorist network they're associated with is going to strike next. We don't know. We have two choices, but they will strike. That'd be sure. We don't know where, we don't know when, but we know for sure they will strike. And as every football coach knows, the best defense is a good offense. We have two choices, because we are fighting the war on terror. There's no escaping that. So we have two choices. We can fight the war on terror in Baltimore and Virginia and Washington, D.C., and wait for them to attack us, and pray and be reactive, and when they do attack us, then we freak out, and then we rally around the flag, and we rally around our president. Or we can have a different strategy. The strategy is we're in a war with terror. We don't have to wait for another terrorist attack in Boston or New York to realize we're in a war with the terrorists. It is a war, it is a cultural war. Next time a politician gets on television and tells you it's not a war against Islam, they're lying.
Amen. Amen.
It is the Judeo-Christian ethics and morals and principles versus Islam. That is at the root, which is why no one's saying it on TV, because that is the real cause of this bloodshed.
That's right.
It is Allah versus Yahweh, winner take all.
That's right.
And so George W. Bush is a genius, and the reason he's a genius, regardless of if you like the way he looks, he's eloquent, he's not eloquent, that's irrelevant. The point is, he realizes that if we fight the war in Iraq and Iran, and in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait, if we do our business over there, we tie their resources and their soldiers and their hoodlums and their murderers and their terrorists, we tie them up so they don't have the ability and the resources and the substance to come here. Because this war is going to be fought. The only remaining question is it going to be fought on the streets of Miami or in Baghdad? And the genius of this president is that he's fighting, he says, no, we're coming to you.
That's right.
Yes, we may lose some soldiers, and there's a price to pay for freedom, but we are going to fight the terrorist war there, not here. So that's why everyone in this room ought to vote for George W. Bush, because the number one job of the president is to protect its citizens. It's not to get his unemployment rate from 5% to 4%. Big deal. If the unemployment rate, you know what the difference between a recession and a depression is? A recession is when your neighbor loses their job. A depression is when you lose yours.
Oh, yeah.
Come on. I like that. Come on. I like that.
And the only difference between an unemployment rate of 4% and 5% are there are some folks somewhere in Missouri that have found a job, but they're not your neighbors, they're not your wife, they're not your children. So the difference in 1% out of 260 million is a minuscule percentage. It's a minuscule number. So it's irrelevant. The economy is a cyclical. The capitalist economy is cyclical. It has its built-in functional ups and downs. So regardless of a Republican or Democrat, at some point what goes down must go up, and what goes up must come down. Okay, there was an old song like that, right? What goes up must come down. So it's a spinning wheel of capitalism. So George W. Bush understands that since we are in this war, and like he said, we did not begin this war, but we will end it on our own terms. The difference between the Republicans and the Democrats is we are willing to treat the terrorist threat as a criminal matter so that when they come over here, if they kill our citizens and our men, women, and children, we will process them criminally through the criminal justice system, and we will treat it as a criminal matter, whereas Bush says, no, it's not a criminal matter, it's a matter of self-defense.
That's right.
And that's what this week's Torah parsha starts with. Yahweh says, when Israel is threatened, look at verse 10, when Israel is threatened, we are to go to war against our enemies. We are not to wait for the enemies to take the war to Jerusalem and Tel Aviv and Haifa and to the streets of Israel. And Jewish Israel is doing the right thing. And the whole heart of the soul of the Torah is Yeshuat Nefesh. Write it down. Yeshuat Nefesh, or the saving of life. So if Ariel Sharon and Tzahal, the Israeli Defense Forces, have to violate every ordinance of Shabbat, working, laboring, driving, anything, they have to do it to defend the nation. Because the whole heart and purpose and soul of the Torah is the preservation of life. Yeshuat Nefesh. Baruch Hashem Yahweh. Now, it also says in verse 10, when you go forth to war under just and correct reasons, not for the sake of killing and unjust maiming of others, it says, Yahweh your Elohim will then deliver them into your hands. When you have taken them captive. Listen, the Torah does not allow us to sit back and wait for the salvation of Yahweh. The Torah and the Israelite faith is to take the battle to the enemy and then watch Yahweh give us the victory. That's what it's about. We're not going to stand still while we see our brother Lot taken captive by Avraham and wait for Lot to send us a postcard where he's being held hostage. We're going to go find Lot and bring our brother back. And sometimes it has to be done through tough care and tough love. So it is not the might and the strong hand of Israel which brings victory. It is Yahweh's blessing that ultimately determines the outcome of the battle. But human effort, on the other hand, must be complete, and unwavering faith in Yahweh must also complement that effort. You understand? As Israel, we are to put all of our effort into our national what? Preservation, physically and spiritually, and what we can do, Yahweh does, and Yahweh gets the victory. He turns the enemies into our captives when we go forth. You get it? We've got to go forth. That's what spiritual warfare is all about. It's all about going forth into darkness, going forth into the pit, going forth into the depravity, and rescuing and pulling people out of their own depravity and out of their own traps. We are to do that as a nation. Now this is a hook. What is a hook? What is a hook? An ordinance that in the natural doesn't make sense. In the natural, it makes more sense for us to defend ourselves when the enemy comes knocking. Right? A mishpat is simple to understand, but this is not a mishpat, this is a hook. It addresses something else, which is a byproduct of military confrontation. When you go forth to war, Devarim 21:10, against your enemies, so notice, what are we to do with our enemies? Pray for them? Yes. But can you fight and pray at the same time? You bet. You better learn how to fight and pray at the same time.
Yes, we do.
You pray for them and you ask Yahweh to give you victory over them and give themselves victory over themselves. Now watch this. When Yahweh your Elohim has delivered them into your hands, and see, you have taken them captive. Look at verse 11. And you see among the captives a beautiful mama, a beautiful woman, and have a desire for her, that you would have her to be your wife. Then you will bring her home to your bait. She shall shave her head. She shall trim her nails. Yahweh even wants the captive looking pretty for Israel. Yahweh says you come home, you shave your head, meaning you get a haircut, get your hair all pretty and get it in order, and trim your nails. And she shall put the garment of her captivity from off her, and will remain in your bayit, and bewail her Abba and her Ima a full month. After that, you shall go into her, consummate the marriage, and be her husband, and she shall be your wife. And it shall be, if you have no delight, verse 14, in her, then you shall let her go where she will, but you shall not sell her at all for money. You shall not make merchandise of her, because you have humbled her.
That's right.
Let me bring this home in simple English, and then I'll go further. If you have slept with another person outside of the covenant of marriage, you've humbled them. According to the Torah, you have humbled them. You must do the right thing and marry them.
Yes.
Get quiet now. It's called humbling somebody, humbling a woman, and you must marry. Now listen to this. No doubt,